All right, welcome back. This is the week you missed. It was a big week. You missed it. It was June 28th, 2022. I feel like 2020 was crazy, and then 2021 was crazier. And honestly, I think 2022 is the craziest yet, and I don't think it's gonna stop. I feel like I said it 2 years ago. We already started the Civil War. It's a cultural civil war. It was a cultural cold civil war. I think we're still in there, but we're definitely progressing. We're getting pretty divided. So what do you think I'm talking about? You have any guesses?
Oh, was it how the FDA banned Juuls for like?
Yeah, dude. My body, my choice. We should be able to smoke whatever we want, right?
Yeah. No, obviously we're talking about Roe versus Wade. Although
Yeah.
I do want to follow up to talk about the Juul thing because I do think the two issues are related, actually.
So I do too, and I feel like a lot of people get upset at me when I mention something like that, and I understand that abortion is, I'll admit, or like I agree, it's a more important topic.
Of course.
It's messing with people's like physical, their mental, their financial. It has so many ramifications, but the bottom line argument, in my opinion, is very similar. And I tried bringing it up a couple of times and I got slammed. So I'm going to keep quiet for a little bit. But it's like, if you are allowed to do what you want in some circumstances, you should be allowed to do what you want in other circumstances, as long as it's not affecting anyone else. Not even affecting, as long as it's not like violent or mean to someone else. Everything affects everyone, in my opinion. Even if you sit down, it's affecting something somewhere. But we have basically that's where I stand. Is I think we should be able to do what we want if it's not affecting anyone and it's only affecting you. So basically what I come up with, or what seems related, and again, I know it's not equivalent, but I do think it's related, and it's a very similar argument. I think compassionate killing should be allowed. Dr. Kevorkian, back when we were growing up, of allowing people assisted murder, essentially. But if you're in a lot of pain and you can't do anything anymore, why not? Drugs, you should be able to do experimental drugs and non-experimental drugs. If you're dying from cancer and there's something that says it's possible it can save you, you should be allowed to try it no matter what. Like, it's your body, your choice. But also, if you're just trying to get fucked up and do anything, whatever, it's your body, your choice. Let someone get fucked up. Who cares? There's chemicals in food that are banned in a lot of countries, but they're allowed here. Why are they banned in other countries but allowed here? But then we ban other substances. It doesn't really add up. And then obviously, abortion, my body, my choice. You should be allowed to do what you want with your body. Now, again, I think some interesting questions come about of, is it just your body, or are you sharing it with someone else? Whatever. And then, is this something that should be federally funded? That's where it might get a little bit confusing. But also, I think this is pretty interesting that a lot of people don't pull up or say. Joe Biden used to be very against abortion, which is just interesting. And RBG said that the way that abortion, Roe versus Wade, was written was not good and should probably be rewritten in the future because it had the wrong argument. So I think that's interesting. And then, there's just a lot of people who actually were against kind of this, but now that it actually happened, they're saying, no, it's actually, we need it good. And it's like, maybe getting rid of it to build a new one that's better could be good too. Who knows? What do you think? I gave you a lot right there.
So I think, and this is one of the big things that, I'm sort of a libertarian-esque person. And, a big thing that I've always heard is that if you believe in freedom, that means you need to believe in the freedom of other people to do things you disagree with. Right. And I think that is something that people lose sight of and that really have a hard time wrapping their head around. So I think that, I think in general, I'm on the same page as you. I think prohibition does not work. I think it does not work for alcohol. It does not work for drugs. It does not work for Juuls. It does not work for abortion. I think you can legalize anything you want and it's still going to happen. So I think that, what we're going to see playing out is it's going to be interesting and it's going to be bad. But I think that my hope is that this actually pushes the country into sort of a better direction, or like an understanding of the fact that, look, we are not a single political entity as a country. We are a collection of states. And I feel like people
don't understand that.
People don't understand that. And like, I think people think it's like a distinction without a difference, but it is a very big difference. Like the way this country was founded was that you had 50 individual little labs of democracy that could all sort of do their own things. And look, here's what I think is going to happen. I think that states that basically completely illegalize abortion are going to suffer for it. They're going to suffer because they're going to end up with negative outcomes amongst their people.
What do you think a lot of people are going to leave Texas? Because
like, it was actually interesting.
I thought that was super interesting because half of Texas is Cali now, and they do not like that there's no abortion lab. They just moved there last year, though. Are they going to move out now, or are they going to try and change policies there?
Well, and I think that that's actually something that I've thought about because, North Carolina, we've been receiving, we moved here from Philly, and a lot of people have moving here from Jersey and New York and the Northeast and California. And, everyone's, the real estate prices are going crazy. And I almost wanted to post on Reddit, like, do people think the Roe versus Wade decision could help real estate values in some of these popular Sunbelt states? Because people really put their money where their mouth is, and they're saying, well, look, I'm not going to move to a state where this is illegal, even if that state might be better for me in other ways. It's going to inherently sort of decrease the demand for housing. And I don't know, it's just like when you step back and really think about all the ways that this decision could sort of have an impact on society in other ways besides strictly the right to receive an abortion is really interesting. I think the other part of this that I am very encouraged by, and and what I've said to my wife and to other people that I've talked to about this, is that and we're already seeing it happen. I think that the free market and people being smart and dynamic are going to figure out ways against this, so that I think realistically the number of women who end up not being able to get an abortion if they want one, the number, it's not going to be like 50% of women who wanted an abortion are no longer able to get one, even if they live in red states. I mean,
you think the amount of people who get abortions is going to go up?
No, I don't think it's going to go up, but I just don't think I don't think there's going to be as many people who are unable to get them as many people are speculating. Because I
think. Do you think it'll be more than now, though?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think if I had to guess, my guess would be it would decrease a bit because, I hope if nothing else that the other thing that this does is really force people to really reconsider contraceptive choices and understand that, at the end of the day, there's a lot of ways that people can prevent themselves from getting pregnant. And I hope that this puts a greater emphasis on this. I think hopefully it pushes the development of a male birth control pill, and that we have better, more comprehensive options for birth control. Like, look, my personal view is that, I would be all in favor of a law that said at a federal level, if your state bans abortion, you need to basically pay for birth control for your citizens for free, or like prenatal care. Like, if you're not going to have abortion, if the state's going to say you must take that child to term, like, I would be fine with a law that said, well, then the state has to cover this woman up until the point of birth and through the first year of the child, or to pay for adoption services or something.
Or if we had a better adoption system or foster care system, that would probably all help that. I agree. So do you think, I feel like Pennsylvania is definitely like on the showcase of battleground states. It has been since the election, but extra important because this year it's Mastriano going for governor against Shapiro. And it seems like if Mastriano gets in, I'm pretty sure he said like no abortion at all, even to save lives. And if Shapiro gets in, I'm pretty sure he's going to give you $1 million if you get an abortion. So like pretty two ends of the spectrum. I guess if you were still in Pennsylvania, would that affect you moving, do you think? Do you think like you would make a decision based on who won? Or do you think a lot of people say it's a big deal, but then like they end up staying where they are because they're still comfortable or because it's too hard to move? Or what do you think about all that?
Look, I think that I don't think it would necessarily impact my decision of where I'm going to go. There's so many other factors at play. Look, we moved to North Carolina not because we liked North Carolina politics or didn't like Pennsylvania politics. We moved because to be near family and to be in a place that had nicer weather and a lower cost of living and just a better overall vibe.
The lower cost of living is related to politics, though, right?
To some degree, yes. So, and I don't know, but again, sort of to my point, I think part of the reason is, you already seen all these companies that have come out and be like, we will pay for our employees to travel to receive abortions. You will have networks of people that will be mailing abortion pills to people in states where abortion are banned. I think you're going to see
people in the black market like me who are going to start giving abortions.
God. Well, because look, the thing is, like currently right now, I think it's a vast majority of abortions are done through medical abortions or like pharmaceutical abortions. So basically like, taking pills and then it basically triggers a miscarriage, and that's sort of the mechanics of it. And I think as far as I know, and again, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, so take that with a grain of salt, but if that's the case, that means that, and look, we all know how easy it is to mail pills through the postal service. Like there's no way that there's going to be any dedication towards finding and rooting out people mailing abortion pills from, California to Alabama. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that brings up another like thought of mine. And again, I'm not trying to say like, hey, focus on me. I'm not saying like one is more worse than the other. But I know a lot of people who get medicine illegally and have like, some people say their life kind of like depends on it. And to me, there's a lot of people who have to operate illegally that other people don't seem to like have compassion for or care for. And I just wish like people were able to understand like, hey, I need to do something illegal now for me. I wish they would understand like, hey, other people maybe are doing things illegal because they feel like in their situation, they have to. And it's like, it sucks that a lot of people having to get abortion pills will be operating illegally now in some states, but it's like, hey, it's a possibility and you can do it at least. In other countries, it's not even possible, which like, that's why people say like America is the worst place in the world and it's a third world country. I still think very strongly it's the best place in the world. We're losing our lead by a lot. We had such a huge lead, but it's still the best place in the world because you have an option to move to another state. You have an option to get contraceptives. You have an option to not get like killed if you go to New York to get it. Where other countries, it's not like that. I don't know.
I agree. And I think the thing that to me is just like most upsetting about this is that we don't like the pro-life and pro-choice sides or pro-abortion, anti-abortion, access, however you want to call it, the inability of them to come together and be like, okay, look, we both disagree over what we both consider to be a really important issue, but how can we make a compromise that neither one of us is going to love, but that will probably best serve the entire country?
Right.
Because I think, and it's funny because a lot of people on the left and liberals, their big thing is like, well, in Europe this, and well, in Europe that. And it's like, okay, well, I think most Americans would support moving towards abortion laws that are in line with most European countries, which what that would mean is a cutoff of about 15 to 16 weeks. That's generally where I think almost every, Western democracy type country in Europe draws the line. Like this idea that America was sort of in line with the rest of the world and abortion was actually sort of crazy. Like we weren't. We had I think the only other countries that had as liberal of abortion laws as America were basically like the UK, China, and North Korea in terms of being able to get abortions basically sort of whenever you wanted. And up to a very late time in the sort of, pregnancy timeline. But yeah, I just wish that we would have the ability to come together and say, look, you know what? States shouldn't be able to ban it, but at the same time, if a state wants to restrict it after 15 weeks or 16 weeks, that gives almost all women plenty of time to understand that they're pregnant and to get an abortion. When you look in the statistics, and this is something that the right wing does that is very disingenuous, they focus on third trimester abortions, late term abortions. Those account for like a quarter of a percentage of all abortions. And they're almost always done in the case where it literally is like, if this baby is delivered, it's going to kill the mother, or it turns out the baby is born with like half a heart and, there's no point in it, it's going to die within 2 days.
Right.
And I don't, and I would have no problem with that. I mean, it's a brutal decision that a woman or a family would have to make. It's a brutal procedure, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to I don't think anyone should be forcing, a human to come into this world just to have to suffer for 2 days in like a bassinet as it inevitably dies. Like
Right.
if that can be, it sort of goes to your euthanasia point. If you know that this baby is just going to suffer for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, and then die, it's like the more humane choice is to, end it more mercifully and more easily. But so I think that I just wish there was some ability for people to engage and compromise and come up with something that would say, this is how this is going to happen, but we don't have that ability.
Yeah, it doesn't happen at all. So do you think, let's say in 1 year, where do you think we stand?
I think 1 year from now, we're going to see a lot of very creative solutions. I mean, one that I've seen kicked around that I think is actually interesting is even in states that ban abortion, you could theoretically see abortion clinics being opened up on federal government property. You could see them opening up on Native American reservations. You could see a lot of sort of ways around this. I think you're going to see the liberalization of access to abortion drugs in very liberal states to make it easier for people to get those drugs no matter where they live. Because I think what might happen is in states like New Jersey, Maryland, New York, California, Hawaii, et cetera, there'll be a wink and a nod and basically be like, well, look, the abortion pills are basically over the counter at this point. Wink and nod. Hey, if you want to figure out a way to ship these to women in Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas, we're not going to stop you.
Right.
And just sort of let these organic networks come up. And again, I don't think any of this should be necessary. I really wish that the path that John Roberts had taken of basically saying that Roe remains intact, but this Mississippi law that established a 15-week ban is also okay. Because again, I think a 15-week period, while much more restrictive than we have now, is in line with much of the rest of the world and also provides an adequate amount of time for a vast majority of women to understand they're pregnant and to make that choice. I think laws like the one in Texas, the 6-week thing, or these fetal heartbeat laws, I don't think they're good because I don't think they give most women the amount of time to understand they're pregnant and to make a choice of whether or not they want to end that pregnancy. Again, it's not something. So I have very sort of conflicted feelings about this because I do feel like I don't like that the choice happened, but I think that the legal reasoning behind why they made the choice is also, sort of sound to some degree. I also think that, because there's this whole thing, well, precedent, you can't overturn precedent. You can't overturn precedent. It's like, okay. And actually there was a senator, I think it was Senator John Cornyn, got in a lot of trouble for this because he had a tweet that I think he worded provocatively that basically said, okay, well, now do Plessy versus Ferguson and Board of Education. And people took that to mean,
Loving versus Virginia.
And people took that to mean to say that, oh, now they want to overturn, segregation and school integration and, interracial marriage. And what he was pointing out is saying that, no, in the case of, Plessy versus Ferguson that undid segregation, or excuse me, I forget. I think Plessy versus Ferguson was the law the decision that outlawed segregation. And basically, look, that overturned precedent. That there was a long established legal precedent that segregation, separate but equal, was okay. And eventually that got overturned. So this logic of just being like, well, it's legal precedent, you can't overturn it. Well, we also had legal precedent that said segregated schools were okay. We had a legal precedent that said banning interracial marriage was okay. And all those precedents got undone by the Supreme Court. So look, it's not, you can't just say that because it's a legal precedent, it's untouchable, because we would be left with a lot of really, really shitty legal precedents. So again, I don't agree with the effects of this decision, but I think I don't think it's like this travesty of a court going absolutely insane. I think it's the court putting the responsibility back in the American people's court and saying, hey, if you want this, lobby your state, elect people that are going to pass laws that you want, punish people that will pass laws that you don't like. I hope that it leads to, higher levels of civic engagement and that people understand that the federal government should matter less in your day-to-day life, and you should be much more concerned about your local politics and your state politics, because at the end of the day, those things probably have a much greater impact on your life anyways. And that is sort of the way that the American system was designed.
Yeah, so a couple things. I agree with all of that, but we only have a couple minutes left. I want to hear if you have anything to bring to the table. But right before that, this is Utah Republican Rep Carrie Ann Lizanby or something. Listen to her input, and this is why no one should listen to any politician, and we should just ignore them. But listen to this. Hopefully, you can.
We don't trust women enough to make choices to control their own body. And my response is, I do trust women enough to control when they allow a man to ejaculate. So, and to control that intake of semen. So that may be inflammatory, but I think as a legislator,
I don't think she's ever had sex. Do you?
I mean,
you can't stop me from ejaculating inside you. I'm sorry, but not gonna happen.
I love it when I love the dirty talk, and it's like, yes, ejaculate inside me. Like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
God.
But, let's abort this conversation, move on to the next, for lack of a better word, and move on.
Jesus Christ. So the other thing, I think that, again, I said is sort of semi-related, is last week the FDA basically came down and said that Juul was no longer able to sell their e-cigarette products or any products in the United States. And it's very interesting because, there's been a lot of controversy around vaping. Some people say it's a harm reduction thing and that it gets people off smoking. Other people have been saying that there's evidence that vaping actually does cause similar levels of damage, maybe not cancer, maybe it creates lung issues. The studies on whether or not those, the issues caused by vaping, they're not as rock solid as the ones that show that smoking causes cancer, which is basically like completely accepted fact at this point. But the thing that was sort of interesting is that the federal government sort of, at least from my understanding, very arbitrarily targeted Juul, because there's a whole lot of other vaping companies out there that they didn't even touch. And there's
a lot of THC companies that have things in their carts and stuff that aren't good either. Yeah. Just because it's THC doesn't mean it's okay if they add other stuff, but continue.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, again, it's sort of this thing. It's like, if you ban Juul, people will use counterfeit Juul pods. People will use counterfeit Juul liquids, which are not regulated by the FDA. I'm not going to draw the moral equivalence, but it's the same effect as saying if you ban abortion, people are going to have unsafe abortions. If you ban safe, regulated vaping products, people will use possibly dangerous, unregulated vaping products. It goes back to my overall point that prohibition doesn't work. It has never worked. People will always find a way to do the things that they want to do, and it's just going to be in probably a less safe manner. So
I agree too. Like, singling out Juul just seems like you're messing up one company's money, which kind of just seems nuts. It's like, why attack them? And then also, I just don't get how no one seems to argue, and I guess I understand because it's from lobbying and money, but Budweiser kills more people.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt, Budweiser kills more people. Smirnoff kills more people. Every alcohol company kills so many more people. Why aren't those being attacked and banned? And then it's like, hey, so what? Alcohol is too big. We can't ban alcohol. There's Everclear is 99% liquor. Like, do we need Everclear? Do we need stuff that's 40% or 50% alcohol? Why don't we cap the alcohol percentage at least? Like, because that's actually going to really save lives. This is not going to save any lives. And then another thing I just think is interesting that a lot of people never bring up. I like to be a fighter or a proponent for the environment. If I have two situations, I like to think of which is better for the environment. Having Juuls is way better for the environment than cigarettes. Cigarettes are the most polluted object in the world. Everyone throws cigarette butts into the ocean. They have plastic, they have leaking chemicals, they kill wildlife. Vapes aren't good for the environment either, but there's way less batteries and you can at least recycle the batteries. No one recycles cigarette butts. So it's like, hey, maybe let's care about the environment more than people who are making a decision for themselves. I don't know, just my point of view.
Yeah, no, I think again, I just think it's crazy because Juul did go to court and they got a stay, so they're still able to sell their products, and it's gonna get hashed out.
Definitely. Or like,
No, I mean, now it's gonna go into the courts and they're gonna both make their case and we'll see what happens. But, I'd also, and again, I haven't done a ton of in-depth research on this, but I had read that some people were saying on a subreddit that Juul had basically been dragging its feet in responding to the federal government's requests in an attempt to get into court to try to hash these things out in a way that would have lasting sort of legal ramifications. So this might have all been part of a bigger picture strategy by Juul to say that we're tired of this regulatory ambivalence, so we're going to force the FDA to try to ban us, in which case now we get to try to go into court to hash things out with them in a way that will settle this. So, I think this is a good example possibly of, lawfare, which is sort of the idea of, you fight for policy by forcing things to be dragged into courts, which is basically what we saw happen with the abortion law. I mean, Dobbs, the original choice that got abortion, that got Roe overturned, that law was really specifically crafted in a way to try to challenge Roe and to create these circumstances that we see now. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be wild to see how all this plays out. Like I said, my hope and desire is that between, governments of states and the federal government doing, going through actions or enacting laws or putting things in federal lands, that most women will still be able to receive access to abortions when they need them. And also, I think the free market's going to help too. People mailing abortion pills, companies paying for abortion travel, nonprofits popping up that will pay for it. So my hope is that this decision ends up having much less of an impact on the lives of women and people, everywhere in America. But I'm not necessarily optimistic. Again, I disagree with the effects of the decision, and I disagree with states that are banning abortion. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's not right. I think it goes against the ideas of sort of personal choice and personal liberty. But at the same time, it's a complicated subject. And, when you poll most Americans are completely agreed that there should be no restrictions within the first trimester. They're about 50-50 on second trimester, and most Americans don't support abortions in the third trimester. It's not this simple thing of people saying, I support abortion all the time, no matter what. Most Americans don't agree with that. So I think that, if this gets us in a step towards a more nuanced understanding of this issue, then I think hopefully maybe it'll be a net positive. But again, I don't know. It's a scary time for the country. It's a scary time for women.
Yep, I completely agree. And that is the week we missed. What do you think is going to happen this week? Aliens? Will one side of the Civil War actually attack the other? Is there going to be another shooting? You know what I'm thinking? I think this summer, I've been saying I'm going to call it. So when it happens, I'm like, oh, see, I called it. I think power is going to go out for an extended amount of time in a large area. And I think food in like one city or state is going to become like very stressed, where people are like, where is our food? Like the supermarkets just don't have food. I think those are two issues that are going to happen at some point, and they're going to be wild to watch.
I think some or all of that could pan out. I hope it doesn't, but yeah. I think it very well might. But
I mean, gotta be prepared.
We'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Well, thank you as always. That's the week we missed. Todd, have a great one. I'll see you soon.
You too. Peace.